join us. Cool. So yes, thank you all. So my name's Adam Graham. I run a business development consultancy for the agencies that we work with. And this year, I mean, we do a lot of other events. This is a unique event for us in backing Movember, and something that affected me earlier this year. I don't know if a lot of you know sort of my backstory, but unfortunately, my father-in-law took his life earlier this year during sort of the first lockdown period. And I think mental health is something that's been quite prevalent, in my life and my family's life, and obviously, massively affected me at that point. And it's something he suffered with for many years, long before I ever met him. But what I wanted to do, this year is, to support it, back the movement. And coincidentally, a client of mine was working with Movember, who introduced me to Helena, and we got talking. And Helena's one of the marketing director at Movember, and gladly has given up some of her time to join us today, talk about the cause, and go into, we'll be exploring a bit more around the creative work. And she's kindly brought along Matt Hunt, who's the co-founder at Matter, also sort of executive brand and strategy director there. And they're the guys who have produced the Movember creative work. So hi, Helena. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to jump in. I'll share the link for my Movember team, just in case any of you want to donate. I'll put that in there for you now. And I think we're good to go. So I'm gonna start with Helena, if that's all right with you. I think just want to sort of explore the kind of story behind Movember and kind of a bit about how it started and what the cause stands for. And I know there's been a sort of change, because when I originally knew about Movember, and I remember telling my wife, I was like, I'm doing Movember. She's like, why are you doing Movember? That's all around prostate cancer. I was like, no, it's evolved. I think it's all about just men's health generally. So tell us a bit about the backstory, and then sort of how that kind of changed over time.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining, and thanks so much, Adam, and the rest of Grey Matters for fundraising. I think you're on nearly £3,000 now, so that's brilliant effort. Thank you very much. So Movember, it started like all really good ideas in a pub between three mates. And they were chatting about trends and fashion and what had happened to the moustache and why had everything else come back, but the moustache hadn't. So they said, you know what, let's all grow one. It was November. It was Trav's 30th birthday at the end of the month. So they decided to rename November Movember and challenge each other to grow moustaches. So in 2003, there was 30 blokes that grew mows. They didn't raise any money. It was just a bit of fun. And then obviously it got out of control and it took off. So in 2004, we actually raised £20,000 and gave a donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation in Australia. So you're absolutely right, Adam. The roots were very much around prostate cancer. And mainly that was because the guys had seen what, the public had done for breast cancer and how that had really been successful in raising funds and awareness, that they thought, something needs to be done about men's health too. And then fast forward to present time. So we are currently the world's leading men's health charity. We're active in over 20 countries in the world. We have over 6 million Mo Bros and Mo Sisters, we call them, members of our community that take part. And we've raised an awful lot of money. So globally, £600 million since 2003. So it's a huge success story and not something that I can take any credit for. It's really down to that brilliant idea at the beginning and those founders and that ambition. But you're right, we are tackling men's prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and mental health as well, and suicide prevention, which is a cause that is so important and I think especially resonates with everyone right now. It's something that was always close to the guys' hearts. They lost a couple of mates to suicide early on and always wanted that to be one of the issues that they tried to tackle. So, but yeah, it's absolutely critical part of what we do. We've got over 1,200 men's health projects globally. and a decent amount of those projects are mental health ones. So absolutely, it's a focus. So Movember's mission is very much to enable men to live happier, healthier, longer lives, and ultimately to stop men dying too young.
Yeah, because the stats are staggering, isn't it? Like 3 in 4 suicides are men, and it's 1 every minute or something. I was reading on the website, which is tragic. And just lastly, then, with your story, what drew you to Movember? I don't know if there was any particular story or good job came along, but just wondered what drew you to sort of wanting to be a part of that.
So I've actually got a couple of ex-colleagues here. I can see their faces.
Okay, be delicate then.
I'll be careful what I say. No, they know the truth. So I was at Comic Relief. I loved that job. I was there for 5 years. So in many ways, it felt like a natural progression to move from fundraising through the nose to the upper lip. It felt like something I could do quite easily. But also Movember was a brand that we all admired at Comic Relief, actually, which sounds strange, I think, from an outsider's point of view, but we were always wondering what's the new mustache? How do they crack that? Well, that's such a genius idea. So visible, so permanent on your face for those 30 days. So I was just really curious, and I think it was the disruptive nature of Movember and the way that they had, changed the sector and sort of flipped it on its head slightly. Really appealed to me, and also I think targeting men was a challenge for a woman, but also for someone that had always focused on, Comic Relief was very much a family brand. It was very targeted towards mums. How could we get men involved? And stereotypically, they are harder to engage in charities and in fundraising. So what was the secret sauce? I was curious.
Yeah, and I mean this moustache, obviously, what a symbol of pulling people together and just from a communications perspective. I mean, it's such a strong symbol, isn't it, that galvanizes everyone and makes it a focus. So Matt, I mean, obviously, it'd be interesting to sort of get your perspective. I don't know, like, when did you guys first get involved with Movember? I know you do a lot in the sort of health generally, but what's your kind of story into this?
So yeah, we founded our agency Matter in 2015, and Movember actually our third client, I think. I mean, we set up as a specialist in sort of sports, fitness, and well-being space, and Movember sort of clearly fits in that. I think they were interested in us because they were at that time just beginning to launch Move, which was sort of part of their sort of product diversification, sort of almost away from the moustache at that point, and getting people to move in Movember, because those 4 letters also appeared in Movember. It seemed like a fairly neat link. So we sort of helped them sort of launch that initiative into the UK in 2015. I think the fact that they were beginning to diversify then was a symptom almost that sort of after 11 years that the moustache had almost sort of lost a bit of its sort of steam, that the growth sort of had slowed a bit, and so they were looking for other avenues to try and sort of drag in some funding. And that was probably the first sort of symptom of the fact that it probably just beginning to lose its mojo at that point, as we saw it. But at the time, we were obviously delighted to be working with them. And then since then, we've just sort of maintained our relationship with Movember on sort of the odd sort of tactical brief up until sort of last year, when for the first time they sort of broadened out their global campaign to agencies that weren't sort of internal. So and yeah, we were very fortunate to be on the pitch list as a result of sort of getting to know them over those. We were possibly something of a wild card, I think, in the set of the agencies that they went to, but we quite enjoyed being an underdog. And we were fortunate enough to win that. So
yeah, I mean, that's always an interesting story for me from an agency business development background, is trying to sort of how you muscled in there and sort of maintain that relationship. It obviously took some time. But sometimes being the wild card isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I think so. It certainly sort of served us, I think. Meant we could probably take a few more risks with it, I think.
Okay, so I know we're going to sort of show some of the creative work. I don't know, but before we do that, I just wanted to sort of talk to both of you about some of the insights and maybe challenges you come up against when talking about men's health. I mean, Helena, you mentioned men, don't typically are sort of the lowest in fundraising. I mean, I know that's a sort of separate point, but just getting men to talk. And I think, even I've seen, generationally, my father-in-law, it was kind of put up, shut up, you know, what are you on about? Feelings, don't talk about this, go to work. You know, it was this dogmatic approach. And I think that has changed. You know, we've seen that in everything, you know, even in football management. I'm a big football fan. So, you know, you see it in the way they manage players and more aware of that. So what has changed, you know, and what have you seen? What insights have you seen and been shocked by and covered when you've been sort of delving into these this audience?
Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, men don't engage with their health in the same way that women do.
Okay.
It isn't as spoken about, and whilst it is improving, there's still a long way to go, and the stats do sort of really back that up. So we know that men die 6 years earlier than women globally, and we know that, as you said, 3 out of 4 suicides are tragically men, and prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men in the UK, and the rates are set to double in the next 15 years. So it's not a good story. It's really not. And I think, I think a lot of it is down to the fact that it's just not an easy conversation to have. And perhaps, you know, the way that men are more likely to engage in their mental health, for instance, is shoulder to shoulder. So we know that whilst doing another activity, like maybe even driving in the car, you're more likely to have a serious conversation about how you're feeling than you would be face to face. So we knew that with Movember, we needed to tackle health by stealth. And I think that is the beauty of the mustache, in that it's a conversation starter. You don't start off with a conversation on your health. It is very much on your mustache growth and how you're finding it. And then the conversation naturally tends to progress onto more serious subjects. So that was they've always been Movember's tactics, and something we sort of hold, you know, stay true to, in order to capture the attention of men.
So it's more of a stealth tactic, and you know, just trying to get men. What is it? Why from what you've seen, why don't men open up as much as women? Why don't they like to talk about health? Is the research gone that deep?
I actually don't know whether we've done any more digging than that. It's just that is a known fact. Psychologically, there may be more in that, but unfortunately, that just is the case. I think it's partly to do with masculinity, partly to do with the way that men are just taught to toughen up and actually man up. It's not a very helpful phrase. So I think that's got a lot to answer for as well. There's also there's a fear of talking about mental health amongst men, particularly in the workplace. So we know that, I think it's something about like 1 in 3 men are worried that if they talk about their mental health at work, they could lose their jobs. So there's just a stigma around and being macho, being the provider. We know, for instance, that like loss of job is one of the triggers, a touch point in a man's life we really need to watch out for, because that can result in mental health issues and is something that we need to keep an eye on. So I think, yeah, a lot could be linked back to masculinity.
Well, yeah, and obviously I think even masculinity has changed what it means, and people have a perception of being masculine and having to have that bravado, and, you know, obviously not showing any sign of weakness or vulnerability, and it just seems sort of crazy. And I see that all the time, you know, the agencies I deal with, and you know, it's quite a male-dominated industry, you know, as I'm sure you're aware, and you know, there's a lot of work to be done there, you know, with people's egos and just kind of like opening up and just being real. Matt, what is there anything you can sort of add to that from a sort of male insights perspective on, and sort of some of the things you've uncovered or wrestled with?
Yeah, I mean, I think our biggest challenge for Movember was fundamentally a penetration challenge. I mean, I think the challenge they set to us was, how do we sort of grow again, sort of as an organisation and as a charity. And so, I mean, we conducted sort of some primary research sort of into Movember to help sort of us understand sort of the audience and what they were thinking about sort of that organisation. And you know, we were delighted they have a fantastic awareness as a brand and as a charity. So 76% of people are aware of Movember in the UK, which is incredible. The interesting thing for us, though, was that 90% of those people who were aware had never sort of participated or got involved in the charity. So there was considerable sort of upside for sort of penetration growth, which is generally how most sort of growth occurs. It was interesting that sort of less than half of those people were aware that Movember were a charity, and a lot of them sort of felt it was sort of a movement or sort of something you just got involved with. Probably again from that founding story where they just did it for fun the first year, and then it sort of became sort of charitable sort of thereafter. But actually they were also sort of less clear on the causes that sort of Movember supports, other than, yeah, they've got this vague notion that it's men's health, and prostate cancer sort of comes out again reasonably high, but there was sort of work to do sort of around that. But I think that the biggest sort of benefit that Movember has is that 80% of those people who were aware of the charity, with their spontaneous association, when you said sort of what are the first two words you think of when you think of Movember, is moustache, and that is an incredibly sort of strong and powerful sort of icon that they sort of own in the mind of the consumer, that sort of we sort of had to leverage off essentially. And as a brand strategy, it's always far easier to start with what's in consumers' heads, and sort of work from there than sort of try and sort of
Here's to the struggling.
Sorry. Typical. That's me in the background, jumping the gun with the advertising. I'm getting too excited to see it.
And I think, I mean, other challenges that Movember had faced sort of in that sort of 10, sort of 16, 18 year period, I think, before we got involved, from a sort of campaign development point of view, is facial hair. But back in the early 2000s, the fashion for men having facial hair wasn't as it is today, whereas almost half of all men today sport some sort of facial hair. So actually so hair on your face is less common these days, or far more common these days, and is potentially less of a talking point. And you have this double challenge of now people having to shave down, sort of shave the beard off to do Movember, rather than just simply sort of grow a moustache on your face. So there's almost another barrier for them as a charity, in terms of sort of the then and now of it.
That's the classic Pringles,
amazing
campaign, which brilliant. I don't know, was that before your time, Helena, or is that something?
That's this year for the first time, I think, isn't it?
Was it this year? Oh, I thought it was last year. Going mad. Who was the brainchild behind that?
It's taken many years and many conversations to
Has it really?
Yeah,
that's interesting. I agree, exactly. Facial hair is more common. I normally have the rest of it, but just gone for the tash this year. But yeah, as I say, it's a great symbol. But yeah, removing it, maybe, especially in certain European countries, I don't know what, like, if there's more moustaches across Europe than there are in other countries, I believe. Okay, so look, all fascinating insights about men. I think I want to look at the creative and the TV ad, and then talk about before that. Do you want to build that up, Matt? Do you want to sort of talk? I mean, you mentioned obviously the challenge was penetration and sort of raising awareness, but it's your show.
No, it's absolutely fine. I mean, I think when we looked at it, we sort of almost went back to the roots, to that sort of pub where you had those three sort of free radicals who wanted to champion the much maligned sort of moustache, essentially. And it was that sort of spirit of sort of fun and irreverence, which I think made Movember so different as a charity, and made it so appealing. And from that sort of pub, they sort of created this sort of counterculture brand, sort of virtually overnight, and it, as Helena says, gone to raise over £600 million. I think as the brand had become sort of grown up and more successful and more corporate, despite itself, it has begun to sort of lose some of that energy, and some of that spirit, I think. And the challenge for us, sort of very simply, was to re-energize the Mo and to almost sort of give it back its mojo, as we described it. And I think when we're thinking about sort of the mediums and the communication, I think we felt that TV was always going to be sort of an important part of the mix in terms of displaying that sort of confidence and that sort of reasserting that as a statement of, we know not everyone's going to grow a moustache, but we're big and we back ourselves, and there's a fame to us, and we're part of the social currency of Movember. And having that confidence to put that front foot forward was very important part of it.
Was this the first year that Movember was on TV? I don't know, has it been on TV in the past? Because I thought that was quite a bold statement. When I saw the ad, I was almost a bit surprised it was on TV.
I think that'd be a question for Helena, but I think it was the first time it had been meaningfully on television.
Yeah, especially in the UK.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in terms of sort of putting that sort of Movember proposition together, we started very much sort of from the base, and what is it that makes Movember distinctive, essentially? And we've talked about the fact they've got this iconic sort of moustache branding. The fact they focus solely on men's health and sort of everything that covers, I think, is again sort of a unique position that they hold, rather than a specific sort of charity that is very cause focused. There's sort of slightly sort of broader platform that they sit on. They've got this very recognised sort of irreverent tone of voice, which is unusual for a charity. They own an entire month, which again, they were the first charity to really begin to do that. And I think the encouraging thing from Movember is it encourages community, and it's almost part of the solution, because by growing moustache, by getting men talking, you're actually sort of aiding those sort of conversations that sort of mean that people do sort of stay sane and well and connected to each other. And it just sort of increases this social dialogue around men's health. And so those are all sort of interesting sort of start points that we felt. I think from a brand character point of view, and I think it's what makes Movember interesting in the charitable space, is that we've always thought of them as slightly of an outlaw brand in a way. They sort of want to inspire a bit of a revolution. Part of the calling of the outlaw is to champion things that are looked down upon or that are slighted, and I think the moustache sort of fell very clearly sort of into that bracket. As I say, they created this sort of counterculture brand that sort of creates this community of like-minded folk that are willing to take that sort of small personal risk, or in my case, quite a large personal risk, of actually sort of growing and sporting a moustache for the betterment of mankind and all those that are less fortunate than themselves. And it's that sort of irreverent, bold, disruptive, sort of a very authentic sort of tone of voice, which I think was important to us. And I think happily they have a very simple purpose, which is, I think Helena's already talked about, sort of happier, healthier, longer lives for men is sort of a very sort of nice thing to have as your North Star. And so from all of that, we had to create our sort of equity. What was the thing we wanted to dramatize through this communication, through the campaign? And the phrase that we landed on sort of that drove the internal creative development was "mustachioed rebels with a cause," which we felt sort of had that spirit of irreverence, that spirit of sort of fun, but also that sort of was playful but doing good at the same time. And that ultimately led to a brand idea, which is "even shit moustaches save lives." So we went sort of very much back to basics and back to the core. We went back to the original fun, actually, that those three guys had in that pub in Movember by just trying this thing in the first instance, because it's the variation of the moustaches that are grown, the humor and the poignance of around that. That sort of ultimately leads to whatever you grow will save lives. Even shit moustaches saves lives. It was a sort of a nice sort of paraphrase of where we got to. And that was essentially sort of the essence of it. And there was a very intelligent media buy that supported that. We were fortunate that the Rugby World Cup was just around the corner. And that again sort of spoke to a lot of that sort of target audience that we wanted to. And we were very deliberate in highlighting sort of the massive sort of variety of people and their moustaches sort of who take part sort of in Movember and the campaign. It's very inclusive in its representation. And, we even had an "I miss my beard" one. So we were talking to those 42% of men that do have a beard that we wanted to shave down in the first instance. And being a charity, and a popular charity like Movember, you do have sort of production companies and sort of directors who are very keen to support you. And we were very sort of fortunate to work with a company called Smuggler, who were the Ad Age Production Company of the Year in 2018. And the director, Joshua Neal, so sort of who directed ads for Tesco and Stella and Johnny Walker, to name but a few. And actually, just in terms of the casting for the campaign, both the static and the film, we used where we possibly could sort of existing Mobros, people who had sort of grown for the charity, who donated and were part of it as well. And that gave it a sense of sort of realness and authenticity as well, and also sort of saved on a few pounds because their usage wasn't going to be as sort of eye-watering as it can be. But even the fact that, from the VO point of view, to have re-siphons in the UK of Harry Potter, Spider-Man and Notting Hill fame do your voiceover. I mean, I think the carrot for him was that we said you could do a Welsh language version as well. And that, again, sort of by happy accident, as part of the media buy, there was a spot on ITV before the England-Wales rugby match as part of the World Cup. And they actually played the Welsh version out nationally with English subtitles. And that, again, sort of created sort of a huge amount of sort of social media and buzz around the campaign. So it all just sort of came together very neatly. But again, sort of all championing the fact that, even a shit moustache can save a life. And that's the sort of the simple, irreverent, playful tone that I think connects with Movember and is part of sort of why people want to get involved and have fun with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you've captured that amazingly, and the energy of the ad and everything that sort of comes through, and the realness. I didn't know necessarily the backstory about the guys in the pub, so that that makes it even sort of more authentic from where it comes from. I can certainly vouch for the shit moustache and being a part of it, but it just brings it into the room. You know, every call, you know, it's amazing because the amount of time we're now on Zoom calls like 24/7, right? So I'm staring at this thing. I have to stare at my own moustache more than any other year, and everyone's seeing it. I thought the face masks would help, but I don't know. We're now in front of a camera our entire lives, which is probably putting it front and center. But yeah, let's look at let's watch the ad. Do you want me? Should I share it? Is that the easiest thing to do? Matt, yeah.
If you've got it, thank you.
That would be great.
Yeah. I'll jump in. Give me 1 sec, and hopefully everyone can see this. Go full screen, and I might start from the beginning. Right, can you see that?
Yep.
Great.
Here's to the straggly ones, the lopsided ones, the first ones, the I miss my beard ones, the hey, I look good with this ones, the he's never grown that in a week ones, the black, brown, red and grey ones, the, that one, the itchy ones, the never forgotten ones, the ones grown by dad, the ones grown for dad, the started late ones, the absolutely filthy ones, the drawn on ones, the finger ones, the badge ones, the I nearly didn't do it this year ones, and the yeah, why not ones. They all raise awareness, raise funds, start conversations and save lives. Because whatever you grow will save a bro. Sign up now at Movember.com.
Great. Virtual round of applause. I know everyone can't hear the rest of the thing. No, it's great. And yeah, so powerful. And I think getting that message, was it hard to try and balance that kind of the emotional message, because it kind of dips in, doesn't it, where you feel, you know, you're bringing back the meaning behind it and then having the sort of fun with it at the same time. Absolutely. Was that something you found challenging to sort of balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all about sort of making the Mo sort of champion, sort of giving it the meaning and being playful with it, but sort of, you know, demonstrating that anyone can sort of get involved. And there is a little bit of personal risk that goes in with it. Obviously, if you sort of haven't sort of been used to growing a moustache before or never done it before, it is sort of putting yourself slightly into an unknown. But that's all part of sort of the experience and why it sort of does become a talking point. And you apologise the moment you see someone and say, my face doesn't normally look like this. And it just sort of breaks the ice. So I think it's just a force for good, I think. And capturing that sort of slightly irreverence with it and the mischief of it, I think, is all part of the fun. Because it's an act that isn't just about sort of, you know, sort of traditional charity where you sort of scare people or sort of paint a sort of a gloomy, sort of doomy picture. You actually sort of paint the solution as being sort of part of it and engaged in this community and having fun with it. And I think that's what sort of is underlying for Movember's success and why the charity has been as successful as it has been, because it does do things differently and it gives people a different way to sort of participate and get involved.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is so different to other charities. And I mean, for me, it feels so relatable, inviting, you know, to be a part of it was so easy. As you say, I think other charities maybe you've alienated or you don't feel as this makes you want to get involved regardless, you know, and I think it's brilliant. Helena, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think what Matt have done really well is put meaning in the moustache, which we'd never done before, which sounds really obvious. So we'd very much sort of just advertised at people and actually showed a lot of good-looking men with good-looking moustaches. We'd never really showed people the realities of what it really is like to grow a moustache for 30 days, which I'm told isn't very long to grow a good moustache. So I think it was genius the way they did that, and also having those moments where we really had to balance the sense of like fun and then like the light and shade, we call it, but then that moment where you get, you know, you see one of our Mowbros, Geordie Jim, in hospital, and he has got advanced prostate cancer. That is a true story, and him with his sons there all coming together for Movember was just really powerful and really emotive. And then you're connecting it back with the why, and doing it for your dad, doing it for those that you've lost. So I think it was really important for us to build that into the story, but not lose the fun and not lose yeah, the energy that makes people want to take part. So it's a tough brief, and we know that we ask for everything. So yeah, kudos to Matter for that.
Definitely, no, definitely. I think it's
I think
phenomenal.
I think where Movember had got themselves to was sort of they'd almost sort of gone beyond sort of the essence of what makes their charity sort of so special, and it was all about, oh, people don't know what causes we stand for, and so we've got to make that sort of front and center. And you know, sort of the message should be stop men dying too young, and that's quite a sort of dark message, which you're landing on people, rather than this sort of fun, uplifting, get involved, which actually sort of has a much sort of better outcome for them as a charity, because it just inspires more people to get involved, and more cash, and therefore the benefit is there. So I think, yeah, it's sort of just sort of being able to sort of be outside the organisation and sort of have an objective look in has I think helped them with sort of how they position themselves, which is why, I mean, they haven't changed anything. I mean, we updated some photography, I think, this year in terms of the campaign for the stills, but apart from that, the campaign is running precise as it was sort of for the second year, and doesn't seem to sort of have got tired at this stage, which is great. And I think they're very sort of comfortable to keep using that, so long as it's delivering the results, which is great.
And yeah, because you could have gone down so many routes. There's so many different messages that you could land. I mean, just out of interest, how many ideas got thrown on the cutting room floor, and sort of was there completely different avenues at one point? Or
I mean, yeah, I mean, when from our original pitch, I think, yeah, there were certainly sort of 3 or 4 different sort of ways in, and different ways to execute this. This was always sort of our favourite. You know, we went extreme as, you know, do you start dyeing the moustache to stop men sort of dying and all that sort of stuff? But and that just again felt you're putting another barrier in terms of people getting involved. So that was a sort of one example. But yeah, no, there was many different ways in, but this always just felt to be sort of the truest to them, and strategically sort of what they needed to do, the right thing to do.
I think it completely stood out when they were pitching. Matt Campbell, their creative director, read this script out, and we just all got goosebumps. We were just like, this is it. It just felt so Movember and so on brand, and it was like they captured everything about us and what we wanted to try and say in an ad. So yeah, I mean, we saw lots of great ideas, but this was a standout one.
And I guess because one of the big insights is about getting men to talk more about their health, regardless of what the health problem is. It's almost like if you celebrate that and just celebrate men being men and growing a moustache and just talking, then it will lead to them talking about their health, which will lead to diagnosis, which will lead to solutions, right? So it's kind of like, yes, it's very clever.
Softly, I think, is precisely the approach that the Movember take in terms of getting to that solution. And I think when they go too hard with this is sort of, you know, sort of and too prescriptive with what you need to do, it sort of takes away some of the appeal and the inviting nature of the charity, I think. So sort of softly catch a monkey is absolutely sort of how they approach it, and we approached it with them.
We actually ran just to add to that, we ran a survey this year to find out if doing Movember in itself is good for your health. And thankfully it is. So we've got some great stats that show that our own Mowbrays, our community, are more likely to look after their own health through doing Movember. So, you know, I think there's over 2/5 of Mowbrays said they confided in a friend about their problems, compared with just 18% of the general population. They're more likely to know their nuts, check their nuts. They're more likely to see a doctor if things don't seem right. So yeah, as you say, Adam, it is having that effect, which is great.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I know that even from a personal perspective, you know, people were like, you know, I talked about in my blog about having sort of anxiety attacks at certain times in my life and panic attacks. And one of my best mates was like, really? You didn't tell me about that? And I was like, yeah, I did. You know, it's something I did. And I went and saw a psychologist about it, and it was, you know, fine. And it was like, you know, just being part of it just created that conversation, which is, I guess, what this is all designed to do. So we've talked obviously about the sort of TV. I'm just interested in kind of the rest of the campaign, how else it's been supported. I know there's lots of sort of media partnerships involved. I don't know what's happening on social, digital, but maybe if you, Helena, start sort of talking us through the sort of wider plan.
Yeah, sure. So we've been working with a media agency called Bountiful Cow for the last 3 to 4 years, and then the Value Exchange as well, I think David, our friend from the Value Exchange, is on this call.
Yeah.
And the media strategy was very much go to MNR. Sounds obvious, but it works. And we have had a lot of success, as Matt has said, with advertising around sport, particularly with the TV buys around the Rugby World Cup, and then this year around Premier League fixtures. We've also been really fortunate that through media partnerships, particularly with Sky and News UK, we've had lots of extra editorial value, which I know we're really fortunate as a charity to be able to benefit from. But an example this year is through the Sky partnership, we've had access to Soccer AM. So we've had Mo AM sections in Soccer AM, which, you know, is money can't buy for us really in terms of being absolutely bang on audience wise. So yeah, we've hugely benefited from that. And then from a corporate partnership point of view, we also really benefit from brands' media spends and then backing the moustache and backing our message. So the likes of Gillette, L'Oreal, Gym Group, Yo Sushi, Pringles, as you've mentioned, KP Nuts, all on board this year and doing an amazing job at promoting the campaign. So it's a combination of the two really. And then absolutely the role of social media is so important. And really it's how Movember first became such a global movement. It really was about Facebook and sharing your progress every day, and just when Facebook was really taking off. So we've got a lot to thank them for as well.
Yeah, and I think because one of the things I also didn't know is we didn't know you had an app, and I just sort of found the Movember app, and it's got on it the Mo tracker, which is great. It creates a little GIF which shows it growing, which you can have a bit of fun with, which I think is actually also quite a nice little part of the advertising mix. So with those partners, Helena, how did you kind of identify those partners? Did you reach out to them? Is it been part of sort of a longer conversation for years? I mean, Pringles, you said, had gone back years. And sort of how do they suggest getting involved? Is it unique for each different brand? Do they come with their own ideas of how they want to sort of support the movement?
Yeah, it varies. So lots of the time we go out proactively to brands where the fit just seems so obvious, and sometimes it is just because there's a moustache in the mascot, like with Mr. Pringles. Yeah. But with Gillette and L'Oreal, you know, grooming brands are so key and so obvious for Movember. They've been long-standing partners. And then some brands come to us. Some brands know what we can do for them and their workforce in terms of engagement and their profile. Quite frankly, they're really keen to get involved. So it is a bit of a mixture. But there are some brands, yeah, we've had on the radar for a long time, and it's down to the corporate partnerships team really, and just constant perseverance. But yeah. And
being a charity, do you get a lot of like extra value support? You know, is that sort of something that's normally a given?
Yeah, no, we do, absolutely. But we also ask for quite a lot. So we ask for a fundraising commitment from these brands as well. So it's expensive to take part in Movember with us, but we do believe that the benefits are really there in terms of commercial benefits, and then also the softer benefits of things like employee engagement. So it's absolutely something that we believe is worthwhile, and we really make sure that it's a natural partnership, and there's, you know, mutually beneficial and something that a brand will want to commit to for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So there's been media partnerships. Obviously, you mentioned the Soccer AM. You've got the TV ad. Is there anything else in the mix?
I think just that I've noticed this year that Movember have done brilliantly, and it's nothing to do with us, but I think it is absolutely right for them, is the celebrity involvement. And the endorsement they get from the likes of sort of Peter Crouch and Mo Farah this year. I think that the way they've sort of managed to select and get sort of A-list celebrities involved this year, again, sort of just elevates it in the public consciousness. Or if he's doing it, it must be sort of something that we need to do. And so the knock-on effect by association you get from that has been, I think, very powerful for them. And I think they've executed that better this year than in any other year that I can remember more recently. So yeah, kudos to them for that.
Yeah, and I just think the whole digital experience as well, like just the website, the way you donate, you build a team, it just feels, I don't know, it just feels more inclusive. It just feels like it's more relatable. You're able to sort of, you know, navigate it quite easily. It's quite interesting how you can look at the different areas to inspire you and to explore what's happening in men's health. Just found it all quite engaging.
That's good to know. I was going to shout out our PR agency as well, Liz Matthews PR. We've worked with them for the first time this year, and they've been brilliant at getting some of those names on board. So I recommend them.
I just wanted to touch upon women in men's health, and obviously, Helena, your involvement, and I don't know what you've seen. Do you find it strange as a woman being involved in such a man orientated cause? Do you think other women want to be more involved, and how do they sort of play out in this picture?
It can be, I'm not going to lie, especially when I can't grow a mustache, and my main job is to get men to grow mustaches. So yeah, you do sometimes feel like a bit of a hypocrite. But no, for me, it's really important. I mean, obviously we've all got men around us that we care about. And we've all got men we know that have gone through certain issues, whether it be, prostate cancer, mental health, or testicular cancer. So it's really important for me. And I have experienced friends that have gone through certain really difficult times, and family members as well. So I absolutely am really passionate about it, and I can see how preventable it is as well. I think that's what's jumped out to me over the past 5 years, is that that despite us saying talk more, and talking is good, actually it seems really obvious, it seems repetitive, but it really does make a difference. Like the number of people that we've been exposed to through doing Movember, the number of community ambassadors and people that do Movember that have said, you know what, just one conversation, one text from one friend on that day when I felt really shit saved my life, genuinely. And hearing from projects where we've got this amazing project up north in Scotland, very north, called The Changing Room. And it's using football to engage men in their mental health, and football fans. And one guy was having a really, really tough time. He'd signed up to the support group, but he was basically on the way to take his own life. And then he remembered that evening he had this support group session, and he couldn't let the lads down. His words were, "I had to turn around and go back to that support group because I couldn't let them down and wanted to, be there." So that's incredible in terms of impact, and it is true. Like if you just hear one of those stories, it does make a hell of a lot of difference. So I think, I really care about the cause, but I can appreciate that it does seem a bit strange to have a woman sort of talking about men's health.
No, well, I see the way you talk about Mo Sisters as well has got crept into the advertising and everything, which I think is really important. But yeah, I think I've been more aware of like men's groups recently in the past year, even outside of Movember, just generally seems to be a thing that never existed before. So it feels like, whether Movember has sort of helped that, I'm sure obviously it has, and created that movement. It feels like society as well is coming along quite naturally in that direction, and obviously that allows you to capitalize on that.
It's funny to say that, actually. I was having a look at our numbers, and we've got more women this year taking part than we've ever had.
Really?
So it's still the minority. It's definitely still majority men, but I think you're absolutely right. And especially this year, I think given everyone's really struggling with their mental health, given the situation we're all in, I think everyone can really relate to it. And women have come out in support of us more than ever.
Yeah, well, it's not, you don't want men to suffer in silence, and it's not just men that can help men, it's women. And if women are more open naturally, then they can encourage that conversation to happen and make it feel not so awkward, or have that stigma around actually talking, about this kind of thing. And I guess we can't really avoid, going sort of nearly 45 minutes without talking about COVID, right? Because it's obviously, I read some stats that it's definitely, had a massive impact on people's mental health. Obviously, I think that's just a sort of given. Everybody knows that. Has anything changed with Movember, like in terms of, I don't know, like directly linked to COVID in terms of how it's supported, seeing a rise in numbers or anything like that in terms of suicide or just, generally?
We've seen a rise in the number of people taking part because of mental health. So we always ask why you sign up. And the numbers of people ticking that box are a lot higher than previous years, and the number of stories that people that have been affected this year is quite incredible. We don't yet know that there's been a rise in suicides because of COVID, and we have to be really careful not to link the two. However, we do know that mental health issues are on the rise, and rates of depression are on the rise. So yeah, it's just more relevant than ever, isn't it? And I think we've all seen and all heard stories really close to us this year, given the fact that we're all in various forms of lockdown, that make it really pressing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's affecting everybody. So, I want to, if anyone's got any questions, I'd like to sort of invite anyone else into the conversation at this point. We've got another sort of 10 or 12 minutes to talk to Matt or Helena. And you're more than welcome to take your cameras off. I don't know if I need to do that for you. If I can do, can people open their videos or not? Have a look. I'm guessing that as a no. Hold on. Richard's got a question, so I'll let him jump in. Hey, Rich. Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Richard. Oh, can anyone else hear him? Hold on, give him a second. No, still can't hear you. We'll come back to Richard. But if anyone else got questions, jump in. Helena, I was going to ask you about this sort of future of Movember. What does the sort of plans for, like, is it November? What happens after November? I mean, it's like, does it all get forgotten about, or like what happens for you guys? And do you start instantly planning the next one? And have you got learning?
We have a really long Christmas holiday.
Which I think we're all jealous of.
Yeah, no, that is nice. But no, we are planning next year's campaigns already. So whilst Movember will always be, our sort of hero campaign, we have other campaigns that run throughout the year, and we're doing more and more of that because we recognise that mental health is relevant year round, and we absolutely can't only be present in those 1 or 2 months of the year. So we have a campaign in April around Testicular Cancer Awareness Month called Know Thy Nuts. We've actually made some giant inflatable testicles, which we're excited about using. And we've got other campaigns throughout the year around Father's Day, around Suicide Prevention Month. So yeah, there's lots more to come from us, and it is just about us speaking to men on different issues and in different ways.
Yeah, because I guess there's got to be other things that take part throughout the year, so that you don't just go quiet. Tom, I think you had a question, didn't you?
Yeah. So hi guys, I'm Tom. I run a marketing agency for alcohol brands and non-alcohol brands called Yes More Agency. We have a philosophy of putting mental health first. So I was really interested in everything you guys had to say. One challenge we have with some brands, clients or prospective brands that we're pitching to, have a apprehension about talking about mental health or putting mental health first when they're an alcohol brand, because we all know there is certain correlations and challenges between alcohol and mental health. I wondered if you either have any advice or recommendations or experience in that area.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a really difficult one. Movember's never shied away from booze, because we recognise how important like the pub is, and in terms of where men are and how people interact and actually how people open up. It is you have some of your best conversations over a pint or two. Obviously, after a few more than that, then they get forgotten about. So that's the balancing act. So we have to be really careful as well. Not like you're absolutely right. So we couldn't, for instance, do an on-pack promotion that says buy a beer and there'll be a donation to Movember. But what we can do is work in other ways. So we can encourage men to have conversations. We work with brands to put on events that bring men together. Obviously a bit more challenging right now. So there are ways around it, because we do fundamentally believe that it is the right place to be. It just needs to be managed really well. So absolutely, we could help you, Tom, with that challenge, because yeah, we have experience in it, and we've got, I think we've got Jameson's on board this year actually doing some cocktails for us, and they we've had Jack Daniels, we've had yeah, a lot of the beer brands before, so it is possible. But it isn't.
It's one of those ones that's it's challenging to sell in at a senior level, especially because often the senior client contacts have historic challenges with how things should be done or shouldn't be done, or what can and can't be done, and so there can often be a barrier there. But yeah, really interesting. I think it might be interesting to talk to you further another time.
Yeah, definitely.
Another interesting example I always think in that space, I always remember Johnny Walker suddenly becoming a sponsor of Formula One. And at the time I thought, well, that's quite an obtuse sort of relationship, given sort of drink driving and sort of how that's a social taboo around that massively. But actually the way they did it and the way they sort of executed it around sort of total responsible message was quite authentic actually, and actually worked sort of pretty well for them as it turned out. So I think there are ways, if a brand is sort of brave enough that they can, and it is authentic to them still, that they can sort of step into areas that might be sort of counterintuitive in terms of what the product does versus what the product wants to say.
Yeah. The phrase I've got is what you can't disguise, emphasize, and go for it harder and faster, and let the audience challenge you, but have good ways to back it up or change.
Yeah, I think if anyone's seen the latest Heineken ad, it's quite phenomenal as well. I think they've done. I know they touch upon mental health, but they talk about a lot of stigmas and diversity and challenges in society that we've all been going through, and the way they've addressed it, I just think is spot on. I think it's really smart. So do check that out. And then I think, Simon, did you have a question?
Can I just see if you can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear. Who's
okay. No, go on. It's me, Richard.
Oh, Rich,
that's fine. No, crack on.
You go first, Richard. Richard, you go first. Go on.
Right. Sure, you're a gentleman. Guys, look, that was absolutely amazing. I could talk about this for hours. And I say that because I am actually on a programme. I tried to kill myself in the past. And I spoke to my partner, who's my fiance, and it was quite a good conversation, because, as she mentioned, we've got a very honest relationship. We talk about everything. I basically come home from work and just bemoan how much I hate my job and how much I hate my life and how much I hate my son. And she said to me, look, we talk about things all the time, but I'm not qualified to have that conversation with you. You need to go and see someone professional. And it's always hard to get an appointment with the doctor. So if you're desperate, just tell them you try to kill yourself, because they got me in that date. Come and see us today. And that was really cool. And from council, I'm well aware of your movement. I'm well aware of Calm. I'm well aware of Mind. And the question I had is, do you guys work across those various groups? I mean, like you admitted before at the start, Helen, that people did associate Movember with the prostate cancer issues, which are fair enough. You're absolutely bang right. It's the reason that men are challenging is because I'm Scottish, as you can hear. It would be a shame if I admitted to having mental health problems. I mean, my father is unquestionably struggling with mental health challenges and always has done. But that was his upbringing, a proper, robust, working class upbringing. You step out of line, you get a smack. That was always the way of it for him, and that's fine. Like, the way I see it, he's done well with my sister and I. But there are other charities doing much the same thing as you. And is it a case that you could possibly pull resource? Because, I mean, look, the truth is that I don't do Movember because I shaved this morning. I mean, I'm just a big hairy beast. Do you know what I mean? I could just trim this off and look like I've been growing it for a month. It doesn't really work like that. But, like, I lost a friend just this week who killed himself. And he was actually in a mental health institute in Dundee, where I'm from, called Carse View. And they let him go, him and 10 others. One of the girls who was let out that day killed herself. And obviously Chris, he just killed himself just over the weekend past. And he was crying out for help. And he's actually made videos on a rooftop. And he's calling out his good friends who are going to help bring up his 18-year-old daughter. And he's naming them. Now, they're then going to assume a massive, massive trauma from responsibility. I knew Chris really well. I used to go out drinking with him. He grew up next to me, but I wasn't one of the names he threw out there because we grew apart. But like, my mates and his very good friends have been called out. Oh, Gavin Murray, like, Stephen, you're going to help look after Molly, my daughter. Like, you'd be like, what? Like, I could have done more for him. I should have done more for him. I'm on Alcoholics Anonymous as a program now for my alcohol, which is kind of the resolve of my problems, really. I take citalopram, so serotonin drugs as well. And that's cool. But like, I think what you guys stand for is incredible. And I've seen the guys wearing the prostate badges on Soccer Saturday, like Letitia and all the boys wearing the badges and stuff. And obviously Movember's once a month. Maybe you could do some badges as well. But I mean, I'm conscious I'm speaking, as I said, I could talk for hours about this.
Yeah. So Rich, is the question really about, you know, how they involve other charities within Movember? So Helena, have you got, do you work with Martin? Do you work with those guys?
Yeah, firstly, Richard, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. That is,
that's okay.
Unbelievably tragic. And we can send over some, I'm sure you've got lots of advice, but if you need it. It's a really good question, because there are a lot of us out here and doing similar things. And I think we do need to collaborate more. The way Movember differentiates itself is we're more about early prevention rather than crisis end. So Calm, like you said, amazing job at the crisis end. They've got their helpline, same with the Samaritans. So we will always signpost to those charities. Every time we put out content that's potentially triggering, we will signpost those charities, and we'll always refer anyone we know to them. They do amazing work. Movember's about preventing men from getting there. So we know what we're good at. We're good at getting men to talk, men to connect. And we feel like if we can encourage more men to do that and to open up, as you said, sometimes it's really instilled in blokes, depending on where they're from and how they've been brought up, to be better at that, then they're less likely to get there. We know if men have got better social connections and better support networks, they're less likely to get there, because you're absolutely right. We can't keep relying on our health system because it's just massively under-resourced. So does that sort of answer your question?
Sorry, yeah. I mean, look, I've got a friend who's not there anymore. Like, he was senior brand at Cancer Research, and I'm saying, like, there's actually thousands of you guys out there. And he said, well, we're not actually trying to stop it. Like, we're actually at the research side. We're trying to develop medicines and things like that. And like, they're the biggest recipient of donations out of all the charities in the UK, he tells me. But it just feels that, like, Brothers in Arms is another one in Scotland that's been around just for a few years now. And I know a few of the guys that set that up, and that does much the same thing. And I don't think there's a confusion. I think Movember is the biggest name. And I think because of its association with growing tashes, I think that's exactly, like, whoever came up with that idea is a genius. I think that's great. But yeah, it's just that there's loads of you guys out there. It's interesting to know where you fit in that entire not business, but like, yeah, in that fraternity of your peers who do much the same thing, ultimately to stop men killing themselves, which is kind of the mental health challenges that we're dealing with. But that was it. I mean, like, there's lots of you guys out there. It's cool to know that where you guys fit is quite unique to Movember, and that's cool. I mean, I love the chat, and I think it's great that this is happening. It's absolutely right. I mean, I should just finish on the reason I was becoming aware of mental health for men in the first place was there was someone from Mind flying outside Liverpool Street Station. And I had no consideration of it, having been in London since 2010. It didn't even cross my mind. My job's mega stressful. I'm a sales guy. And she's running after me like, do you know what mental health is? And I said, well, I think so. She says, like, do you think you have mental health problems? And I was like, I'm quite dismissive of it, really, Helena. I was like, well, I'm mental, if that's the question. I'm pretty mental. So no, I don't mean that. And she couldn't let me go. She walked and gave me a flyer, and I just put it in the bin because I'm that guy that's difficult. And then like that, I got to the point where it wasn't about difficulties. It was about leaving my partner and my son. But yeah, like I say, it was just like, do you guys overlap with the other charities in the space, I guess? So I am conscious that I've spoken forever.
Well, it's good. No, it's good. And it's good to hear from you. And we're obviously sorry, to hear some of the stories you shared there. And I think, Rich, I know we've spoken in the past, so let's try and get another call in. Let's keep talking. And, if we can do more of these things, just general chats, I think it's going to support everyone.
I think so.
Simon, did you want to quickly jump in? If Helen and Matt, if you guys have to shoot, just flag to me quickly. But if we've got a couple minutes, then I know Simon's got a quick question.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Cheers for that, Richard. Interesting to hear what your sort of point is. And I think the more people who speak up about this, the better. I mean, I speak up myself about this. I write about sort of mental health, and sort of men speaking up have always been a little more sort of reserved in things. And but like, I mean, I did my first Mode Space in like 2011. So I'm a big fan. I actually came up on Facebook Memories the other day. So first of all, it's like 9 years ago. I've aged really badly, but secondly, like it makes you realise like how much the space has evolved. Like Adam mentioned the follicles in the app. Like I just think you've done a really good job of that. And I love the ad. I like is the light and shade. Like, oh yeah, the fake moustaches, these moustaches, and then like you intertwine it with like moments, like touching moments, like the picture or the people doing it for your dad. So you sort of, it's a typical kind of bloke approach. It's like, oh yeah, there's little bits of like soft, but overall it's like sort of quite jovial, and there's a lot of levity. And I think you just nail it in the advert, so that's great. So I actually run a media planning consultancy. I'm a media guy, so obviously I know Battlefield Cal well, and I work with partners, and they sort of bring plans to life and stuff. I'm all about the partnership stuff you're doing with, you know, Valerie. Cal. Got a quick question around, what was my question? Yeah, media strategy. You mentioned go where the men are. It's perfect, right? I mean, it makes total sense, and I agree with that. But there's been other conversations around like, you know, how do you market to women? How do you get women involved? Like, do you have any plans? I mean, it's probably late this year now, but what are your plans maybe already for next year about maybe doing more sort of, I think Matt used the word obtuse partnerships there for Johnny Walker. I love that phrase. Have you thought of any obtuse partnerships for women's press and content? Because it's quite an interesting paradox, isn't it? Because obviously, like a lot of the women press in the last couple of years has been more about, you know, female empowerment. I just wondered if there was anything more around creating this provocation around, you know, moustache, men's mental health, cancer, this sort of thing. Like, get your hubby to check his nut is or whatever it is. I don't know. That's terrible, but don't use that. But that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just interested because I think that's a massive demographic that could be unlocked as well. It's clearly growing in the right direction. But yeah, I just want to say it's great. I just wonder what the plan is there for the women's side.
We've talked about it loads, but we've been quite single-minded on focusing on men because we also really want to empower men to take better care of their own health. So we know that women can often be the gatekeeper to a man's health. Like a woman will remind a man to go to the doctor to get something cleaned. You know, that's how what happens. So we need to encourage men to take more responsibility ultimately. However, if you've got an amazing idea, send it over, because actually we haven't started talking about women in a big way. So always open to ideas.
Cool. No, yeah,
all right. Thanks, Simon. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matt and Helena. Yes.
Thank you.
I think that's all we got really time for. Overrunning by about 5 minutes. I think, you know, we've had a lot fly in. I think, you know, if you want to send other questions, send them to me and I can get them to Helena and Matt, and we can always respond over email or something at a later time. But yeah, just want to say a big thank you to Helena. Obviously, very busy month for her and very important. So thank you for giving your time up this morning to talk to us. Matt, thank you for sharing, you know, the insights and some incredible work for you've done for Movember. And, you know, we love the ad and hopefully we'll see more of it in the future. And yeah, I think that's a wrap.